From Citizen TV, this is Tonight with Sam Gituku.
Thank you for choosing Citizen TV on this 6th day of November 2025. Tonight on Data Point, we're reflecting on just what is the actual power demand in the country and what is the production capacity that is installed by the power generating institutions. We'll be talking about that, including the 3,243 megawatts, which is the installed power generating capacity in the country. We'll be talking about what is the effective capacity that we have out of that. But at the same time, we will talk about the highest peak demand, meaning that at a time that every other person who has electricity in their home or facility is using power, the highest demand is 2,411 megawatts, usually in the night. But this was recorded recently in October by the Kenya Generating Company. We'll also talk about what the president said while he was on tour outside the country, that there's a load shedding that has been happening between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. What does data say? What do reports from different institutions say? We'll talk about that later on Data Point. But of course, later on, we'll have a conversation on the NewsGun to take a look at some of the activities that have happened in the public sphere. But first, here are the top stories tonight. Government engages Tanzania over safety of Kenyans and asks families with kin in the neighboring country to provide their details. "17 deaths in 11 months. Human rights groups raise alarm over rising cases of police killings in custody. What was that? 31 million ways of conducting elections in Africa. The case of Tanzania. Full hearing on the NewsGun. Compensate protest victims. ODM renews push for protest victims compensation as they hold memorial in honor of departed leader Raila Odinga. Our sign language interpreter is Njoki Shege. We'll begin tonight with mounting concerns over the safety of Kenyans in Tanzania. The Foreign Affairs Ministry is asking Kenyans with relatives in the neighboring country to immediately submit their details. Foreign Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi has engaged his Tanzanian counterpart and urged Tanzania to respect the East African Community Common Market Protocol that allows free movement of goods and services. Olive Barrows reports.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has broken its silence on reports of Kenyan nationals falling victim to a crackdown on foreign nationals in Tanzania. Reports of foreign nationals being harassed by Tanzanian security agents follow remarks made by Samia Suluhu Hassan at her reinstallation as president in the administrative capital of Dodoma on Monday.
Haikutushangaza kuona kuwa baadhi ya vijana waliokamatwa kutokana na kadhia hiyo wametoka nje ya Tanzania. Vyombo vyetu vya ulinzi na usalama vinaendelea kufuatilia na kuchunguza kwa undani zaidi kilichotokea na kuirudisha nchi katika hali tuliyoizoea kwa haraka.
Prime Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi on Thursday noted reports of incidents where the rights of several Kenyans have been infringed in a telephone conversation with his Tanzanian counterpart for Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation, Ambassador Mahmoud Thabit Kombo. Both parties, according to official communication from the Office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, agreeing to uphold the principles of the East African Community Common Market Protocol and the utilization of diplomatic mechanisms to address incidents. The State Department for Diaspora Affairs calling on Kenyans aware of their fellow citizens in danger in neighboring countries to reach out using its communication channels or through Kenya's High Commission in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. The High Commissioner, Isaac Njenga, on Wednesday notifying Kenyans in Tanzania that they resumed normal operations following the lifting of a curfew imposed during the discredited October 29th general election. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs stands accused of silent complicity when the human rights of its citizens have been violated by the neighboring countries of Uganda and Tanzania through unlawful detention and torture. The whereabouts of Kenyan activists Bob Njagi and Nicholas Oyo, who disappeared while campaigning for opposition politician Bobi Wine in Uganda 36 days ago, remain unknown. Another Kenyan activist, Boniface Mwangi, has sought remedy from the East African Court of Justice for unlawful detention and torture by the Tanzanian government for showing support for detained Tanzanian opposition leader Tundu Lissu. Olive Burrows, Citizen TV.
The government has for the first time confirmed that a Kenyan national was shot and killed during the recent post-election unrest in Tanzania. Interior Principal Secretary Raymond Omolo, however, says that the government is taking all necessary steps to investigate the circumstances surrounding the death of 33-year-old John Okoth Ogutu, a Kenyan teacher who had been living and working in Tanzania. His remarks come amid growing frustration from the victim's family, who say they have been taken in circles by officials of the Tanzanian High Commission in Nairobi as they seek answers and support for the repatriation of the body. Citizen TV's Ben Kirui has been following that story.
For the second time this week, the grieving family of John Okoth Ogutu returned to the Tanzanian High Commission along Taifa Road in Nairobi, clinging to the hope of receiving news of the repatriation of their loved one's remains. But their hopes were dashed once more as officials instructed them to return on Monday, just as they had been told 4 days earlier.
Tumewasilisha mabarua zake kwa government, bado hatujapata suluhisho yoyote. Wenye tulikuwa tuna communicate nao pia kutoka huko, sasa communication imekatika kabisa. Tangu nilete barua Monday kwa ofisi ya High Commissioner ya TZ, mpaka sasa hii walituchukua namba yangu, mpaka sasa hii hakuna nini yote wamewasa tupigia watujulishe kuhusu maneno ya TZ kama mwili imepatikana ama bado. Hakuna vile tulimletea hiyo nini, amenyamaza.
The family's anguish has been compounded by a disturbing video clip they say was sent by a colleague of Ogutu at Sky Primary School in Kinondoni district in Dar es Salaam. The footage, which is yet to be authenticated, allegedly shows the 33-year-old teacher lying motionless in a pool of blood.
Huyu ni mwalimu, kama hajakufa ni huyu, na bado ni huyu. Unaweza angalia hiyo nini sura mzuri. Na hii ndiye clip tulipata ya mwisho kama tayari ameuliwa. Picha yake ndio tulipata jana, kufikia jana jioni, yenye wakati alipigwa na akapata kuanguka chini.
Mounting pressure from human rights groups and a section of lawmakers prompted the Kenyan government on Thursday to break its silence and confirm the fatal shooting, which occurred during post-election unrest in Tanzania. Authorities say investigations are now underway to ensure justice is served.
This matter is of grave national concern as it touches on the safety and protection of Kenyans working and residing abroad, particularly within the East African community. We want to know the diplomatic and consular interventions undertaken by the government of Kenya to ensure prompt, transparent, and independent investigations into the killing and to secure justice for the deceased and his family.
We are doing what it takes to be able to make the necessary arrangements for making sure that that particular case is handled in a manner that is respectful.
As Ogutu's family waits anxiously to bring him home for a dignified burial, questions continue to loom over the safety and welfare of Kenyans living and working in the neighboring country. Ben Kirui, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
At the same time, the African Union Observer's mission on the just concluded and disputed elections in Tanzania reveals how the elections were manipulated into a resounding Samia Suluhu victory. The Observer's report indicates cases of ballot stuffing, internet blackouts and abductions and how they compromised the integrity of the elections.
Naapa kwamba nitakuwa mwaminifu kwa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. Nitaihifadhi, nitailinda na kuitetea.
The dust is settling on Tanzania's controversial election that handed President Samia Suluhu her first elected term. The elections, which also handed the ruling party, CCM, the majority in parliament, continue to draw criticism over the manner in which it was conducted. The latest report from one of the observer missions, the Africa Union, paints a damning picture of the environment during and after election day. The observers say the election failed to comply with the AU's principles and standards for democratic elections. The AU observers noted that there was voter apathy in most polling stations across the country, and even then, the few voters were allowed to vote without identifying themselves. The mission also noted that in polling stations where only presidential ballot boxes were set up, there were instances of ballot stuffing where voters were issued with multiple ballots to vote, compromising the election's integrity. The mission faulted the Tanzanian government for the internet shutdown and restriction of media freedom during the voting, counting and tallying of the votes. Indeed, during the counting, the mission noted that ballot counts did not tally. The preliminary report from the AU mission mirrors the scathing one from the Southern African Development Community, which also flagged incidents of stuffed ballots and low voter turnout, factors that contributed to the elections falling short of the requirements of the SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections. The AU has also determined that the elections did not comply with the AU principles and international obligations and standards for democratic elections. Similar sentiments have been echoed by the human rights defenders of Tanzania and the Tanganyika Law Society, who pointed out the killings of civilians, destruction of property, internet shutdown, arrests and beatings are some of the issues that characterize the elections, and called for the immediate stop to police brutality and arbitrary arrests. Brenda Wanga, Citizen TV.
Now back to matters of the nation. Civil society group, the Independent Medical Legal Unit, IMLU, has released a new report showing a worrying trend in the number of Kenyans who have died while in police custody. The report shows that 17 deaths in detention occurred and 56 others linked to excessive police force within 1 year. The organization is calling on the government to act as many families are still seeking justice. This comes as the Senate debated a motion to install CCTV cameras in police stations to prevent such cases. Willy Lusige reports.
Scars of police misconduct against citizens continue to deepen, with a worrying increase in deaths linked to law enforcement officers. A new report on the deaths of Kenyans who died while in police custody or in prison reveals shocking statistics and raised serious concerns. According to the human rights group IMLU, within the past 1 year, 17 people died while in custody, with autopsy findings showing the deaths were caused by police officers.
Kenya is witnessing and has witnessed a deeply troubling rise in deaths occurring in police custody. Between 2024 and 2025 alone, IMLU has documented 17 cases of deaths in custody. These deaths were reported in police stations, remand facilities.
The deaths were reported in at least 10 counties.
And these counties include Nairobi, Nakuru, Murang'a, Siaya, Mombasa, Kakamega, and Busia.
The report further shows that there were attempts by the government to conceal the cause of some of these deaths linked to police officers, while many affected families are yet to get justice.
Causes of death range from cardiorespiratory failure, a cardiogenic shock due to multiple injuries, suggesting different things that include physical assault, asphyxiation, and hanging. In some cases, pointing towards possible staging of suicide.
The report also confirmed that apart from those in custody, 59 other Kenyans died as a result of excessive force used by police, especially during anti-government protests.
Despite the existence of the National Coroner Services Act, which mandates the establishment of an independent agency to investigate and clear or reportable deaths, its operationalization has been delayed.
This comes as the Senate discussed a motion in which, if passed, will see CCTVs installed in police stations, measures aimed at curbing deaths in custody, and the excessive use of force by the law enforcement officers. Willy Lusige, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka visited the grave of the late Raila Odinga at Kang'oka, Jaramogi in Siaya County, where he urged the people of Bondo and the Odinga family to allow all Kenyans, regardless of tribe or political affiliation, to pay their respects to the late Raila Odinga. Ida Odinga, the widow of Raila, said that the friendship between Musyoka and the late Odinga can never be erased, given the long political journey they shared, while also saying that all those that loved Raila Odinga are welcome to give their respects. Little Zenges reports.
About 100 cattle led the procession of the Wiper Party leader and his allies into Kang'oka, Jaramogi as a symbolic gift to the Odinga family during this period of mourning. Kalonzo Musyoka, together with leaders from his political home turf, were seen observing Luo traditions and customs as they paid their respects to a close friend and long-time political ally.
We're very happy to have you guys here, especially today, which is one of the hottest days.
Memories of Raila and Kalonzo's close bond resurfaced, particularly their political camaraderie, when Kalonzo Musyoka supported Raila Odinga's presidential bid 3 times, serving as his running mate twice in 2013 and 2017.
We were in the trenches. We said resist. Raila Odinga will be more powerful in death, I repeat, than when he was alive. Because he inspired the young Kenyans. He inspired the Gen Zs.
Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka has been a friend of Baba for many, many years. And that friendship cannot be wiped out.
Following claims that some leaders might be barred from visiting Raila Odinga's grave in Bondo due to political differences, Kalonzo Musyoka called on the people of Bondo and the Odinga family to welcome all Kenyans, emphasizing that Raila was a national leader.
I know that the Kikuyu nation, for example, will come. Our brother Rigiji would want to come. And those who spoke badly spoke for themselves, and others will come.
Only those who love us, only those who love Raila Odinga, they are the ones who come here to the funeral. And for that, I'm very grateful. I know some people would like to mix it with the politicians, with politics. Personally, I'm not a politician. My husband was a superb politician, not me. So don't expect me to bring in any politician.
Leaders have continued to honor the late Raila Odinga for his leadership, wisdom and service to the nation as they offer comfort to his family during this difficult time. Melita Oletinges, Citizen TV.
At the same time, the Orange Party now wants immediate compensation of victims of protests as agreed in the 10-point agenda entered into by former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and President William Ruto early in March. During the Raila Memorial Service at the Sony Green Stadium in Awendo, Migori County, ODM leaders demanded full implementation of the 10-point agenda as goodwill of the broad-based government arrangement. Senior Political Affairs reporter Stephen Leto reports.
Compensation for the victims of protests echoed during the Raila Odinga's memorial service in Awendo constituency, Migori County, with ODM leaders in unison revisiting the cry of families of thousands of victims who fell during the past protests. ODM leaders used the platform to demand immediate compensation of the victims who fell during those protests.
The biggest part of our issue was also on compensation of victims. Na mimi nataka niombe our courts, our judiciary, our people who are hurt, the victims of post-election issues are waiting, wanangoja compensation. Na Baba pamoja na the president, they put together the committee under Professor Makau Mutua to handle compensation.
Watu wakaenda mahakama wakasimamisha hiyo maneno. Mimi naomba mahakama imalize hiyo kesi haraka ili vijana yetu ambayo wameumia hapa Migori, wameumia Homa Bay, wameumia Kisumu, wameumia Siaya, wameumia Mombasa wapate pesa yao.
The ODM leaders who joined thousands of Odinga's supporters in Awendo say they will fast-track the passage of the supplementary budget that will factor in funds for the victims' compensation.
Wale wanatuimbia 2 term ama 1 term, our 2 terms will be based on how the promises that we have been given will be implemented.
I and John Mbadi, we have agreed. Once they tell us that this is the amount of money that is required to compensate our people, we will be able to do our part and be able to avail the resources.
The High Court in Kerugoya had last month temporarily halted the government's implementation of its newly established panel chaired by Makau Mutua, or compensating victims of demonstrations and public protests. Acting party leader Dr. Oburu Oginga rallied the Lakeside region to fully back ODM and secure its space in the coalition buildings, even as they vow to remain in the broad-based government. The leaders call for unity within the party.
Baba started ODM, and ODM means Orange Democratic Movement. Underline the word movement. Movement.
When it came to party and people issues, Raila had no compromise. When it came to issues ambayo inahusu wananchi, Raila hakukuwa na compromise yoyote.
The Orange Party now embarks on November 27 by-election campaigns as it seeks to solidify its support bases ahead of the 2027 general election. Stephen Leto, Citizen TV.
To matters education, 6 more suspects have been arrested over alleged KCSE examination malpractices, bringing the total number of culprits arrested in 4 days to 45. The suspects apprehended include students, invigilators, center managers and supervisors, with the Ministry of Education warning of dire consequences for anyone implicated in examination cheating. Seth Olale reports.
More KCSE culprits involved in alleged examination malpractice are being apprehended in the first week of the nationwide exercise. The Ministry of Education has apprehended 6 more suspects, including a student, 3 invigilators and a supervisor, in the latest crackdown targeting exam cheats. In West Pokot County, 4 officials, including 3 invigilators and 1 supervisor, were arrested at Kapchemogen Examination Center and suspended. The suspects are accused of exam malpractice, with the case being pursued by DCI Kapenguria. In yet another arrest, a student at Oreyet Mixed Secondary School in Chepalungu, Bomet County, was apprehended over alleged exam practice. In Garissa County, Eric Ouko, a suspect allegedly impersonating NEC officials, was arrested by the Dadaab DCI at Liban Secondary School. The total number of suspects arrested nationwide in connection to exam malpractice now stands at 45, even as the Ministry of Education warns of dire consequences for anyone implicated in exam cheating. Seth Olale, Citizen TV.
And with that story on the KCSE issues, we are taking a short break here. When we come back, we have so much more, including data points with what we are seeing on the data available about the Kenya power generation and the concerns that the president raised while on tour of Qatar, saying that we are having challenges to even run a data center. We have that, and of course, coming up is also the news gun.
Coming up, what was that? 31 million ways of conducting elections in Africa, the case of Tanzania, the full hearing on the news gang.
Welcome back. You're still watching Tonight, and it's time now for data points. We're looking at with the power generating capacity in the country. Let's begin by looking at what the president said yesterday, or is it the day before, that there is load shedding that happens in the country between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m., where some areas are shut down from the national grid. Then the national production, according to the president, is 2,300 megawatts, and there's a data center that was supposed to be set up costing, or rather requiring, up to 1,000 2,000 megawatts of power, and therefore there is a problem with how that can run given the country's capacity. But now when you look at the data, this is a report from the Kenya Power and Lighting Company of the financial year ending June 2024, says that the installed capacity in the country is 3,243 megawatts. But then there's a difference between installed capacity and the effective interconnected capacity, meaning what is available for distribution, 3,056 megawatts, still higher than the president's number. Then there's something important. The wind and solar contribution to this national capacity is 635 megawatts, which is considered to be intermittent in nature, meaning sometimes may not be reliable. It depends on the amount of wind that is available, the amount of solar, but also how well it is stored. Therefore, if you have to knock off that from the 3,056 megawatts, you remain with some 2,421 megawatts, which could be considered to be stable. But then what is our peak demand? According to the same report by the KPLC, the peak demand was 2,342 megawatts. So peak demand means that when majority of the clients are connected and are using power. That's KPLC in 2024. Let's take a look at what else data is telling us. Now, the latest report from KenGen tells us that the highest peak demand has been recorded, which was on the 24th of October 2025, just a few days ago, and it was 2,411 megawatts, still slightly higher than the stable supply in the country, which is 2,421 megawatts, according to the Kenya KPLC, Kenya Power and Lighting Company. Let's take a look at what KenGen said after that record that was made on that 24th of October, that notably no load shedding was reported across the national grid during the record-breaking demand period, a testament to Kenya's robust system management and investment in renewable capacity spearheaded by KenGen and supported by other sector players. That's according to KenGen on the 20th of October 2025. But then the KPLC in its report cites that there are certain options it has had to look for, bearing in mind the capacity in the country. One of the things is that they do load management is required. That's what the KPLC says. A strategic investment is required. Adequate system support during peak demand hours is also necessary. And then there's something else, sufficient spinning reserve capacity for contingencies. So in a situation where you have some outage, you require some reserve which can be deployed to sustain the national grid at a particular given time. So that's what KPLC says. KenGen says no load shedding was required. KPLC says it may be required. The president says it actually happens. Now, let's take a look at the contribution of each source of energy in the country. For hydro, which has the second highest contribution, the installed capacity is 26% of the national installed capacity. But then installed capacity versus effective capacity, meaning what eventually gets into the national grid is 26.5%, slightly different. For geothermal, contribution is 29% installed capacity, but what gets into the national grid is slightly lower. Then you look at thermal, 19%, effective is 17.4%. Wind contribution is 13%, eventually gets to 13.9%. Then for solar, 7%. The actual contribution comes to 6.9%. And then there are imports that have been growing over the years, now at 6%. Installed capacity, but then effectively they contribute up to 6.5%. Those are just some of the figures that are necessary in considering that. But then again, the president spoke about an EcoCloud G42 data center project that was signed. An MOU was signed some time early last year. It was supposed, the initial plan was supposed to require 100 megawatts. It is situated at the KenGen Smart Industrial Park in Naivasha, but in future, they hope that it will take up to 1,000 megawatts, meaning it will be so big to require that amount of power. That's what the president was speaking about. But let's just briefly talk about what is the data center for your understanding. We're talking about large-scale tech facility. Of course, it has digital and IT infrastructure for an organization or for a country in this case. And then also there are servers and storage systems for them to manage the flow of that data center itself. What is key here are processes to process the data, to store the data, and eventually to manage the data. And it becomes quite critical, especially at a time that the country and the world is moving towards artificial intelligence and ensuring cloud computing efficiency. And obviously, a data center would require high and stable power supply. That's data point for this week, and we'll be engaging the gang, which is already here shortly. But first, let's hear what the president had to say in regards to this question of power supply and power generation in the country.
We signed an agreement there between G42 of UAE, Microsoft of America, and Kenya to establish data centers. Sindio? Sasa wakati nimerudi nyumbani haya tumeanza data center. Tukaambiwa one data center requires 1,000 megawatts. Na tuko na 2,300. tuko na 2,300 megawatts the whole country. So ili tufanye hiyo data center, we have to shut down half the country. Unaona sasa? So we need to have, if we have to industrialize, if we have to engage in manufacturing, we need minimum 10,000 megawatts of energy.
All right, so that's the president there, of course, saying what he said about the capacity in the country. Of course, a slight difference between the figures he's citing, 2,300 megawatts of national production. That is just about the peak demand that we have in the country. If you're to look at the installed capacity, it is way higher, over 3,000. But then again, when you're to consider the intermittence of the source and stability of the source, you get to about 2,400, which is more stable. Jay Bonyo, what do you make of this? The president speaking about this in a foreign land and laughing at us.
Well, with us. I think the president was making a business pitch, but the set of data that he was using were not in line with what actually is on ground. So basically, the fact of the matter is, for us to set up data centers and run them effectively, we may need more power than what we currently have. That is a fact. And you've also heard that the government has got these ambitious plans to set up several funds that will be able to finance all these projects. So as he was making his speech, probably he needed a line that would sink, but it was a line that I don't want to say was full of half-truths, but then again, he made a pitch, but with the wrong set of data that ultimately compromises or makes people not believe the entire plan. But what we must agree is that the question of power in this country needs to be addressed. We need to generate more, because the conversation and some of the things he's saying there, that sometimes they have to shut part of the country. Well, I remember a few years back, must have been the Kenya Association of Manufacturers presented an idea that industries needed more power when they were full operational, especially in the evening hours. So they were requesting that if there was a way that those parts of Kenya where they have these industries could be allocated more frequencies for power, so that they're able to do more of their manufacturing in the evenings, then probably that is what the president was alluding to.
And Jamila, you know, in this country, we like to look at our neighbors, even if they're not very close. There's a case of South Africa that have struggled with load shedding for a very long time, despite them having access to even major deposits of fossil fuel. But you have always said that we are not doing load shedding because of how well you're managing our economy. The admission or the claim by the president that we are now doing it, what does it say about our consistency in how we approach issues? But also, what do you make of those developments?
Sam, a few things come to mind. We need to remember that power rationing is a major national economic issue. Why? Because of what it will mean if there is power rationing. I know that people on the far left of this room would not remember, or the far left of this room would not remember the rationing in the 90s.
I can take the mic away.
During the 90s, during President Moi's time, there was power rationing in this country. And what did it do? It impacted hospitals. It impacted manufacturing. It impacted schools. It impacted livelihoods. It even led to job losses. It led to a slowdown of economic growth. It led to business closures. So power rationing is a major, major national economic issue. So a few questions come to mind. Why did the president make such a statement in Doha, Qatar? Because for such a statement to be made, you need maybe a domestic policy update. Maybe you need a technical briefing from the Ministry of Energy, from Kenya Power, from EPRA, and you need to explain a clear mitigation plan. So what are we going to do about it? Because Kenyans reacted very strongly to this announcement because it came out of nowhere. There was no context. There was no reassurance. It just said, we are doing power rationing from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m. So the question is there a real electricity shortage in this country? If yes, when did it begin? When did it begin? And why weren't Kenyans told earlier that there was power rationing? And if there is no shortage, was the president briefed incorrectly? So there are a lot of questions about this. So he made that announcement. So what next? There should be follow-up. Give us details, because I don't think there's been any details given about exactly what this means. So this power rationing, where has it been happening? Since when? Who has been affected? So what are we going to do about it? Is it going to spread? Are more areas going to experience it? There are a lot of questions, Sam.
Interesting to say that, because as we have this conversation, there are several parts in the country that have had challenges, perennial challenges with I think they're watching. Perennial challenges with power outages. You'll go to a town and an entire afternoon there's no power. It takes a few days to restore power. Then you hear there has been load shedding. We don't hear clear communication, Linus, about what's what.
Yes, because in Kenya we don't have a very consistent story when it comes to our energy needs. We always lie between great potential and a disaster. In the sense that there is capacity in this country for the production of especially green energy. You know, our geothermal potential is not really fully exploited. That Rift Valley can power this country and beyond. But I think when the president spoke in Qatar, a lot of Kenyans will then be looking for specifics of, yes, you've pointed out at where the problem lies. Now tell us, what do you intend to do about them? Because we have many failed experiments in Kenya when it comes to energy. Among the most recent failed experiments is one that the president is very familiar with, which is the Aror Kimorer dam that was supposed to actually add to the national grid. So internally, we need to have this conversation because, again, we need to see what our unstable energy supply is doing. The cost has always also been a very, very serious concern. I think there was a time here we listed over 10 companies that have left this country because they feel, foreign investors, because they feel that the energy cost in this country is very, very high. Potentially, when you're speaking to Kenyans that are out there in the diaspora, including Qatar, they are now out there looking inside. And some of the questions that they raise out there is the cost of energy back home, not just at consumer level, but also at industrial level. These are some of the things that the president needs to confront. Just a few, was it in September that it was in Ethiopia attending the launch of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, right? Which is a huge project. It's a humbling moment for leadership. I know it was facing this way, but I think when he's talking in Qatar, but I think when you stand in Ethiopia before that majestic dam, think as leadership, how about us back home? What is it that we have failed to do, and why? Because the final point I'll make here is, when it comes to energy generation, an ordinary citizen can do absolutely nothing about it. It is a government assignment. So I think, yes, we've had him. Now he needs to retreat to the inner room with his team and work at answering the questions that he raised in Qatar.
And I think we'll be importing a bit of power from the Ethiopian
yes.
dam. Oh,
yes.
Your take, Yvonne.
We already are. Look, there is, for me, it's two things. It's when the president seemingly announces that we're in power rationing in a foreign country. Of course, now you understand why there is alarm or concern amongst Kenyans who are wondering, okay, so have we been undergoing some form of rationing, and why is such an important statement being made outside the country at what, like Jay says, was seemingly a pitch to investors and Kenyans living in the diaspora. Like you say, looking for that, there's the diaspora bond, there's the sovereign bond, there's the infrastructure bond, which is what he's looking for, and what the country we know has been pitching for in the future. But I think what is interesting for me, I just want to read some excerpts from the Kenyan statement.
Right.
This was released on the 28th of October. You alluded a little bit to that in your data point. And it talks about Kenya's appetite for electricity reaching a new peak. There was a peak demand of 2,411 megawatts, which was the highest ever daily consumption. And then it goes on to talk about how that peak demand was met by the several sources of energy we have, both renewable and non-renewable. And then there is paragraph 7 of that says, and I quote, "During this time of high peak, high demand, notably, no load shedding was reported across the national grid during the record-breaking demand period, a testament to Kenya's robust system management and investment in renewable capacity spearheaded by KenGen and supported by other sector players." It ends quoting Engineer Njenga, who is the DG of KenGen, says, "This growth in power demand is a strong indicator of Kenya's economic rebound and the success of our long-term investments in sustainable energy generation." This was on the 28th of October. The president was making this statement just a few short days after, when he's saying there is some form of load shedding. But then there is a statement from KenGen that's saying, at a time when we had our highest peak demand ever, that there was no load shedding that was required because of the great energy mix that we have, which, by the way, has been touted several times, not just by the president, but the minister, the cabinet secretary as well, of about over 85% of our energy in the country is from renewable energy resources, and that what we do use most of the day is our renewable energy. Right. And then in the evening, when there's a higher demand due to consumers being at home, then they kick in hydro or thermal power. So this is what we've been talking about. For me, it's just that contrast that comes from KenGen on the 28th of October, and a few short days later, the president is announcing that there is some form of load shedding. So no load shedding required because we're doing really well, but then there is load shedding between the president and KenGen. Who do we believe, who do we trust? And also, of course, load shedding, like you said, power rationing causes quite a lot of, it's not just an economic issue, it's also a social issue. And when such a statement is made outside the country, of course, there would be some concern,
And of course, there's no discounting the idea that there's necessity of more power generated, because our industries are struggling, they don't have sufficient, and when it's available, it's expensive.
Correct.
A lot of businesses or industries are not starting out because they cannot access affordable power. So there's a real problem there. He says that we need about 10,000 megawatts, and we will need more than 1.5 trillion shillings. So that very big question has to be answered, and unfortunately sometimes... it has to be answered here.
At home,
because at the end of the day, like in many instances, public goods have been a problem in this country. Kenyans have had to go for private solutions to public goods.
Right.
You're talking about education, talking about health, where you have to go find your own private solutions. Now you're talking about this particular question of energy. On transport, you have to go back to your pocket to pay for the expressway. Now we're having toll roads. So consistently, we're getting to more Kenyans having to pay for what is supposed to be provided by the government. Never mind, taxation continues.
And what would be the equivalent for a private way of fixing the problem.
Well, I think we'd have to go to, what do you call them, PPAs? PPPs?
Yes.
What is that?
Private partnerships.
Public.
Yes.
Or are you talking about the
power
IPPs?
purchase agreements, and then independent power producers would have to come in.
Right.
There was a suspension. Which year was this?
That must have been in 2020?
Yeah, 2020. There was a suspension. I think there was communication of it being lifted, but we have to wait and see what is happening, because again, there is always a lot of politics of investments, politics of energy, who is getting into it, who is greeting who is meeting who, what is the plan.
And there's also another thing. I mean, I think when we talk about our energy needs, we generate a good amount of energy, but how do we get it from where it's being generated to the last mile, that is to the consumers like you and I? We know of how much is lost by KETRACO from where it's generated, even by those independent power producers who are generating this energy, but it's not up to them to then deliver it and transmit it to the consumers. And there's a big question there. And of course, in KETRACO, we know there was a story of Adani, and we know how that went. But then it's enough to generate it here, but how do you get it to
where it needs to go? So hopefully we'll have the data center up and running. Perhaps.
By the way, we do have a data center already in the country.
The plan in Naivasha, so that then you can have accurate data.
Just one more thing. The one data center for which he says he signed an agreement in the US, only to realize after that data center would need more energy than we can provide.
But the clarity of the matter is that the initial plan was that the initial phase would require 100 megawatts.
Which
it is located in the Olkaria geothermal power generation area. So that would be met. But ultimately it will require 1,000 megawatts. That would be a problem, for sure.
You're all forgetting some trillions of shillings that were also mentioned somewhere.
1.5?
1.5 trillion.
To Tatafuta. So that's News Gang. We'll be back shortly. And before then, there's a story we need to look at, which is about 10 days since the unexplained disappearance of Shadrach Maritim from his residence. Troubling inconsistencies have emerged. Despite no confirmed sightings, his mobile phone remains active and has been used to transfer funds and engage in online transactions. Meanwhile, critical CCTV footage that initially captured his last known movements has mysteriously vanished, and Ode Francis has been on this story.
Shadrach Maritim was officially reported missing on the 27th of October. His phone has, however, been active. CCTV recording showing Maritim stepping onto the road for what appeared to be a routine jog has disappeared. Detectives failed to secure this footage until nearly 4 days after his disappearance, raising concerns about procedural lapses. Evidence obtained by the investigations team revealed that Maritim's phone remained operational after he disappeared. On the evening of the 28th at 7:24 p.m., hours after he was last seen, his device transferred 10,000 shillings to Felix Kimutai Magut. Further transactions followed. At 4:49 a.m., 3,500 shillings was sent to the same recipient. On the morning of the 29th, the phone was used to purchase mobile data. Later that evening, at 5 p.m., another transaction of 15,000 shillings was made to Magut. On the night preceding his disappearance, Maritim was reportedly with his partner, Mercy Chebiche. She expressed frustrations over the sluggish response from investigators, noting that their phones were not confiscated until days later, despite being with Maritim during his final known hours. Mercy suspects that Maritim's personal guard and assistant may possess crucial information about his whereabouts. She questions their lack of urgency and why they failed to accompany him on the day he disappeared.
For me today niseme nimedisappear. Of course watatafuta yule rafiki yangu Saidi wa karibu, wajue ya kwamba Waisi ya Masi anapitianga wapi, anafanyanga nini. But today ndio wamechukua hizo simu for more investigations, which is it's too late. This is the 7th day missing person. It's too late for them to collect.
Chief Investigator Daniel Mulele of Uasin Gishu County admitted that no substantial leads have surfaced regarding Maritim's location.
We are doing physical search. We have also submitted his phones to cyber crime for exploitation. perhaps there could be any information that could lead us to exactly what happened.
In 2022, Maritim was abducted and later found in Bungoma County. Ode Francis, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
Now, the Jipange na Viusasa caravan entered its second day in the western region to the excitement of residents who embraced the Viusasa message. Raw Media Services, in partnership with Viusasa, is celebrating 8 years of content aggregation on Viusasa, Kenya's leading online content platform. With 50 shillings, Kenyans can subscribe to Viusasa, enjoy a wide range of video content, and stand a chance to win up to 2 million shillings.
The caravan kicked off in Mayanja, Bungoma County to an electrifying reception from residents who were eager to interact with their favorite presenters. From Raw Media Services stations, Radio Citizen, Mulembe FM, Vuka FM and Sulwe FM, which continue to dominate the airwaves across the region.
Tunashukuru sana wasikilizaji, wametupokea kwa njia nzuri sana na msafara wa Jipange na Viusasa, kwa sababu kuna grand prize ya 2 million na tungependa hii 2 million ikuje kwa watu wetu Western. So weenda tu kwa M-Pesa paybill number 724177. Sababu naona
Viusasa fans continue to win 50,000 shillings daily, 500,000 shillings weekly, and a grand prize of 2 million shillings, all by subscribing to the Viusasa platform. The ongoing caravan has also offered content creators a platform to showcase their talent and explore new opportunities.
Nimefaidika na Viusasa, watanisupport kwa muziki wangu. Hapo nitafurahia sana.
Tumepatana na a lot of our subscribers ambao wanajisajili kwenye Viusasa, na pia tumeweza kukutana na a lot of content providers. Other than just to award our loyal subscribers, tuko hapa kutafuta content providers mashinani. Tumekuwa na content providers wengi sana Nairobi, lakini sasa tumekuja nyumbani kutafuta content providers.
The 4-day Western Region Tour will pitch tent in Bungoma County tomorrow, before wrapping up in Busia and Kakamega counties on Saturday. Steve Shitera, Citizen TV, Webuye, Bungoma.
Coming up in business, Safaricom half-year results. Investments in tech continue to bear fruit for Safaricom that records 52% increase in profit after tax.
In business, telecommunications giant Safaricom has reported a strong half-year performance, with profit after tax rising by more than 51% to 42.8 billion shillings on the back of growth in both its Kenya and Ethiopia operations. The company attributes the gains to higher data usage, the success of its M-Pesa platform, and steady expansion in its new Ethiopian market. Here is Jasmine Omboy with that report.
Safaricom's group net income jumped by 52% to 42.8 billion shillings for the 6 months ending September 30th. In Kenya, net income grew to 58.2 billion shillings, supported by higher service revenue of 194 billion. The growth was mainly driven by increased demand for mobile data and digital services.
Shows two things. A very strong Kenya business, which has grown 9.3 top line and 22% bottom line, driven by M-Pesa, which is 14% up, and mobile data, which is 13% up.
In Ethiopia, the company narrowed its losses to 15.5 billion shillings as operations gained traction. Service revenue more than doubled to 6.19 billion shillings, while the active customer base climbed to 11.2 million. Mobile data remained the biggest contributor to Ethiopia's earnings, accounting for more than half of the total revenue. The company has invested more than $2.5 billion in its Ethiopian venture to date.
So we are starting to see the benefit of investing in Ethiopia. And whilst there are still issues, especially around currency, we believe that Ethiopia will deliver fantastic momentum for the Safaricom Group.
The group's total customer base rose to 62.3 million, with nearly 46.5 million active monthly users. Connectivity remained the company's largest revenue source at 96.2 billion shillings, with mobile data growing to 40.3 billion shillings, supported by the rollout of 4G and 5G services. Safaricom also maintained a 34.3% market share in fixed internet.
Our mission as a technology company goes beyond connecting people. It's about connecting them to opportunities. Over the years, the board has overseen innovations that have significantly advanced economic inclusion and empowerment.
The company has also upgraded the M-Pesa platform. The new system has since doubled transaction capacity from 6,000 to 12,000 transactions per second on M-Pesa.
We will also have it embedded AI so that it allows us to detect fraud, because we know fraud has been a challenge for our customers.
Safaricom's continued investments into technologies like AI has seen the company's profits continue to rise. This at a time when the company's leadership has expressed optimism about the future. Jasmine Wamboi, Citizen TV.
The latest pension report has revealed a concerning trend of investment concentration in a few asset classes by pension funds. According to the Pension Industry Report of 2025, the sector invested 92% of its assets in only 4 asset classes, including government securities, guaranteed funds, quoted equities, and immovable property. This is despite the sector reporting a 12% growth in assets under management in the period between December 2024 and June 2025. Jimmy Mbogo has more.
In the 6-month period under review, which is December 2024 to June 2025, the government was the biggest beneficiary of retirees' investment through government security, with pension funds investing 1.3 trillion shillings, a growth of 12.34%, which took more than half of the entire pension portfolio at 52.53%. This is followed by quoted equities, which saw an increase of 26.13% to 255.2 billion shillings. Pension investment in real estate investment trust rates also increased by 8.61% to 12.7 billion shillings, while investment in immovable property, which is among the 4 preferred asset classes for pension funds, fell by 5.47% to 235.6 billion shillings, suggesting a preference by schemes for more liquid investments. According to the report, the positive changes in investment in government security and quoted equities reflect strong investor confidence due to favorable interest rates offered by the government and a strong equity market recovery, respectively. The report also shows that pension funds have remained within the statutory investment limits for all the asset classes. Further, only 5 major pension funds control an overwhelming 92.9% of all assets under management in the country's retirement benefit sector, highlighting the high level of concentration within the industry. The dominance underscores the significant influence of these large schemes on investment trends in the country, returns and policy direction in the pension market. It also points to a limited role played by smaller pension schemes, which altogether manage less than 10% of total assets. Jimmy Mbogo, Citizen TV, Nairobi.
The Commissioner of Insurance, Godfrey Kiptum, has asked the Association of Insurance Brokers of Kenya to make sure that Kenya comes out of the grey list. Speaking at this year's AIBK Regional Conference in Mombasa, Kiptum noted that cost of doing business has gone up, urging stakeholders in the sector to comply with the latest regulations for Kenya to be out of the grey list. AIBK CEO Eliud Adiedo and Absa Bank Kenya Board Chairman Mohamed Nyauga say the move will have significant effect on the ability of the sector to borrow from the international market, asking players to comply with the regulations set and streamline the sector.
And a number of countries moved out of the grey list. So in East Africa, we could be the only ones on that grey list. And I don't know, Kenya being on the tail on some of these things, I don't know how many of you get embarrassed on behalf of the country. What is your contribution to that embarrassment? But nonetheless, can we make sure that we pull up our socks. We will work together and ensure that we get out of that grey list in the long term. But for now, the effort begins with us.
It is a little late in the day to try and overturn what is already law. So what we want to do as a body is to try and get assistance from FRC and IRA into how best we can comply. We do not fear compliance. However, we want to be walked through, given baby steps on how to arrive at the expected destination.
And when you are grey listed, obviously it affects your access to certain financial facilities that are offered by different entities. And therefore it is important that the insurance industry, being a player, also ensures that they comply with all these regulations because it is critical for the country.
So it's 12 minutes after 10 o'clock. We're taking a short break here, but when we come back, we have the sports news. But remember, later on, the news gang is here. At the Kasarani Indoor Gymnasium, the opening two matches were entertaining, ending in identical 3-2 scores. The National Youth Services team pushed Nairobi Prisons all the way before losing 3-2. NYS won the first set 25-18 before Prisons won the next two sets 21-25 and 22-25 rather. NYS drew level with a 25-20 win in the fourth set, but were edged out 18-16 in the final set. Eldowas Water from Eldoret gave Administration Police a run for their money in the second match of the day before losing 3-2. APA took the first two sets, 21-25 and 21-25, but then allowed Eldowas back in the game. The Eldoret side won the set 3 and 4 at 36-34 and 25-20, but ran out of gas to lose the deciding set 11-15.
Kidogo reception and then mchezaji wangu wa nje kidogo alipoteza ile concentration kidogo, lakini wako sawa sababu tulikuwa tumejiandaa vilivyo.
Kutoka kwa mistakes ndio tulifanya set 1 na set 2 tulikuja kulearn wao, na nikapata kwa substitutions nilienda kufanya ndio nikaenda nikapata lineup nzuri. Yes.
Kenya will host the Africa Women's Sevens Rugby Tournament in less than 10 days' time at the RFUEA grounds on the Ngong Road. The Kenya team, the Lionesses, has been hit hard by injuries to key players, but out mistake of putting up a good show on home ground. In the last week of training, coach Simon Odongo has 14 players under the microscope, and you have to drop 2 before the tournament kicks off on the 15th of November. Despite Kenya being a favourite alongside South Africa, the coach says they will play each match like a final, starting with their opener against Ivory Coast. Kenya is in Pool B that also has Ghana. 12 teams have been divided into 4 pools of 3 teams each. Lionesses like Judith Auma and Yvette Akech are rushing against time to fit for the tournament as they recover from injuries.
For us, is actually just to give them as much game time as they need, and just to make sure the players gel enough. And because our target, having already qualified for Sevens 2, is to make sure by the time we get to Sevens 2, we have a stable group, core group of players who can always compete at the highest level.
We've been second for a while. In 2018, we took the cup in 2018, so the tournament's here at home, so everyone is ready to show our fans that we are able to take it back.
The last round of matches in the Kenya Premier League before the international break begin tomorrow and run through to Monday with all 18 teams in action. Bidco United entertain Tusker FC tomorrow at the Kasarani Annex from 4 p.m. Former champions Tusker FC, who had a slow start to the season, have a chance to climb to third in the standings if they can pick all 3 points. Bidco United can go back to joint top if they beat Tusker. Bidco has an appetite for the big boys, having beaten Gor Mahia and Nairobi United United and Ulinzi Stars in their 3 wins of the season so far. For Tusker FC, they are looking for their 3rd win of the season, having won only 2 of their last 7 matches. 3 more matches will be played on Saturday.
Solid team. They play with a lot of compactness, and they try to counter teams in terms of transitions, and of course they are dangerous on set pieces. So this is an area that as a team we have to improve and check that we get it right, because like I said earlier, we get this technically and tactically, then I believe we are going to get it right.